story. So what's going on in Dune? The movie is based on a book that was written by Frank Herbert in the 60s. There have been many attempts to adapt this book to movies and TV, and most of them aren't very good. Dune has been called unfilmable because the book is so weird and complicated. The writing is full of internal monologue and thoughts instead of action and dialogue. The plot is layered with heaps of secret plans and hidden motivations. Its world-building is richly detailed, with hundreds of words for its languages, cultures, and religions. Dune explores big ideas about consciousness, politics, and philosophy, and the Dune sequel books get increasingly strange and cerebral. The new movie is a pretty close adaptation of the first half of the first book, but it still leaves out a lot of important plot lines and details. So how does the book compare to the movie? What's the real story of Dune? This video has spoilers for the 2021 Dune movie and for the first half of the first book. It has no big spoilers for the next Dune movie or for the sequel books, but it does mention some small lore details and quotes from the sequel books. So Dune is set thousands of years in the future. Humans live on many planets across the universe, and they're ruled by the Emperor, Shaddam IV. We see the Emperor's herald in the movie, but we don't see Shaddam himself yet. Beneath the Emperor are the great houses, like House Atreides and House Harkonnen, powerful political dynasties who rule planets with armies and wealth. The houses meet in a congress called the Landsraad, which balances against the power of the Emperor. The other big political power is the Spacing Guild, because the Guild controls all interstellar spaceflight. Guild navigators use a drug called spice that lets them see into the future, which is the only way to guide spaceships safely across the stars. In the movie, these big Guild spaceships called Hayliners look like tunnels that you can pass through to instantly reach a distant planet. You can see another world through this ship. It's like a wormhole. The later Dune books describe this as folding space. The Guild is secretive and mysterious. It's hinted that Guild navigators have mutated and don't look human anymore. So everyone kinda hates the Guild for being creepy, extortionate space weirdos, but everyone needs them to travel. So for thousands of years, the universe has been ruled by this balance of the Emperor, houses, and Guild. They're bound together by the Great Convention, which has rules banning the use of nuclear weapons. But a cheeky bit of assassination and warfare is allowed within limits. Politics in Dune is a deadly game. Every noble family watches their back for assassins, and tests their food for poison. The houses rule their planets under a strict feudal class system. Slavery, oppression, and exploitation are common. This is an unfair, unequal universe. The houses have shares in the Chome Company, which controls trade in the universe. It's kinda like the Dutch East India Company, or Amazon in space. Chome means money, and all the houses fight for a slice. In this struggle, a tiny shift in interest rates can change the ownership of an entire planet. Science and technology is limited in Dune. Like, there are giant spaceships and laser guns, but there are strictly no computers or robots or AI. Because thousands of years in the past, people did rely on thinking machines. But then some people used those machines to take over the world and enslave people, and it sucked. So then there was a religious crusade called the Butlerian Jihad that destroyed all the computers and banned them forever. In the Orange Catholic Bible it is written, "Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a man's mind." The idea is that thinking and making our own decisions is what makes us human. Letting machines think for us makes us less free and less conscious, so that's why the machines were destroyed. Ever since, humans have had to learn to think for themselves. They founded schools to train the human mind and body to its full potential. So now there are people called mentats, human computers who can think super logically. They process data, calculate probabilities, and perceive people's motives. The Mentat Thufir Hawat works as a strategic advisor to House Atreides. In the books, Mentats take a drug called Sappho to make themselves smarter, and the drug stains their lips red. In the new movie, Mentats just have tattoos on their lips instead. Like the Mentats, the navigators of the Spacing Guild have trained their brains to calculate the mathematics of spaceflight. And the other important school is the Bene Gesserit, an ancient mystical order of women with highly trained minds and bodies. Their practice is influenced by Zen Buddhism, with meditation and contemplation to achieve inner balance. Bene Gesserit can precisely control all their muscles and nerves, even their body's biochemistry and their reproductive systems. They have powerful memories and perception. They can read people's feelings through their words and body language. They can control people with their voice. They can fight in the weirding way. They're basically ninja nuns. The Bene Gesserit are named after the Jesuits, a real-world Catholic order. Like the Jesuits, the Bene Gesserit do missionary work in distant places, and they have political ambitions. The Bene Gesserit work with the Emperor and houses, and they say they live to serve. But the Bene Gesserit also have their own plans. For centuries, these witches have manipulated the universe from the shadows. So, Dune is about a galactic empire with medieval politics. It's a sci-fi future that rejects technology, and instead focuses on the power of the human mind. The author of Dune, Frank Herbert, was fascinated with thinking and learning and language, how we can expand our consciousness to better see the universe, sometimes with the help of psychedelics. Characters in Dune are constantly getting high, expanding their minds, and arguing about philosophy like college undergrads. So Dune is basically like Game of Thrones in space on drugs, and the most important drug is spice. Because spice not only makes spaceflight possible and can give visions of the future, spice also makes people live longer, extending lifespans by decades. Many people are addicted to the spice, and if they stop taking it, they'll die. It's an addictive, psychic, mind-expanding, life-extending, spaceship-flying drug, and it tastes like cinnamon, so naturally, spice is the most valuable substance in the universe. And spice only comes from one place, the desert planet Arrakis, also called Dune. On Arrakis are giant sandworms whose life cycle makes spice. Humans harvest the spice and sell it, so whoever controls Arrakis becomes rich. The conflicts for resources in the deserts of Arrakis are comparable to conflicts for oil in the Middle East. For the last 80 years, Arrakis was ruled by the brutal House Harkonnen, led by the Baron, Vladimir. The Harkonnens come from the planet Giedi Prime, the oil-soaked, blood-soaked hellhole of the Imperium. The movie imagines this planet as being totally industrialized, exploited and polluted until nature is gone and smog blackens the skies. The Harkonnens exploit their people too. They have slave laborers, sex slaves, and gladiator slaves to kill for sport. The Harkonnens use and consume everything to feed their endless appetites for power and pleasure. The Harkonnens are a mouth that swallows all. The Baron Vladimir is a ruthless political schemer who constantly indulges his desires for food and sex. He's too fat to support his own weight, so he uses suspensor technology, which lets him levitate. To rule Arrakis, the Baron installed his nephew Rabban, who is called the Beast for his brutality. Rabban is not known for his intelligence. The Baron thinks of Rabban as a muscle-minded tank brain. The Harkonnens are advised by Piter de Vries, a Mentat assassin who loves torture and poison. Piter is addicted to spice, and this expensive habit forces him to stay loyal to the Baron. The Baron uses people's weaknesses to control them. In the movie, the Harkonnens have a freaky human spider thing as a pet, which is not in the books, but according to interviews, it's meant to be a messed up science experiment. This was a human who was made into a monster. In the books, there is a faction called the Tleilaxu, who do weird biology experiments, so maybe they made this spider. Some fans theorize that this spider is Yui's captive wife, Wanna, made into a monster to torture her. But that's just horrifying speculation, and is not in the books. Point is, the Harkonnens are dicks, and the spice on Arrakis made them rich. But at the start of the story, the Emperor orders the Harkonnens to leave, and he gives control of the planet to House Atreides, led by Duke Leto. The Atreides have a reputation for honor and integrity. They protect their people and inspire loyalty in return. The Atreides are descended from Atreus and Agamemnon of ancient Greece, and they rule the planet Caladan, a world of oceans and jungles, farming and fishing. The Atreides aren't very rich, but Leto is popular and influential among the houses of the Landsraad, and the Emperor hates that. He sees Leto's popularity as a threat. So when Shaddam gives them Arrakis, that seems like a good thing for the Atreides, but really, Arrakis is a trap. The Emperor and the Harkonnens secretly plan to destroy the Atreides with an army of Sardaukar. Sardaukar are the Emperor's elite soldiers, renowned for being brutal and merciless. They're said to be the deadliest soldiers in the universe. The Sardaukar come from Seleucia Secundus, a prison planet for the worst criminals in the universe. Seleucia is a hell world where only the strongest survive, and it's this harsh environment that makes the Sardaukar so powerful. The Emperor doesn't want the other houses to know that he's attacking the Atreides, so in the book his Sardaukar are disguised in Harkonnen uniforms. He and the Harkonnens want the Atreides to die in the dark. The story begins with Paul Atreides, son of the Duke Leto and Lady Jessica. Paul is just 15 years old in the book, and as the heir to House Atreides, there's a lot of pressure on him. He has no friends his own age because of the dangers of assassination. He's highly trained in politics and in combat, and in the book he's trained as a mentat to have a powerful, logical mind like Thufir. Jessica trains Paul in the way of the Bene Gesserit to focus his mind and body, his perception and memory, and to use the power of the voice to control people.
Give me the water.
It might seem unrealistic to control someone with your voice, but author Frank Herbert said we do it all the time. Like, it's easy to make someone angry with an insult, or happy with a compliment, and with practice you can control people in more subtle and powerful ways, like politicians and advertisers do. You've just got to know your audience, use the right words and tone.
Like and subscribe to Alt Shift X.
So Paul is young, but he's a politician and a warrior with a powerful, highly trained mind. Leto visits the grave of his father, the Old Duke. The Old Duke used to fight bulls for sport as a matador, until he was killed by a bull in the ring. The Atreides family keep the head of this bull, with the Old Duke's blood still preserved on its horns. So the bull head represents facing danger, putting yourself at risk, just like Leto is putting himself in danger by coming to Arrakis. Leto knows that the Emperor and the Harkonnens plan to attack him, but he takes the risk anyway because he believes he can win. Leto plans to use the desert power of Arrakis by making an alliance with the Fremen, the local desert people. In the book, Leto believes that the Fremen will be great soldiers specifically because they live in the harsh environment of Arrakis, just like the Sardaukar are powerful because of the harshness of Seleucia Secundus. Author Frank Herbert was very interested in how environments affect people, and how people affect their environment. So Leto bets everything on this plan to make the Fremen into his army to beat the Sardaukar. In the movie, Paul says he doesn't want to exploit or oppress the Fremen like the Harkonnens did. But in the book, the Atreides don't care about the Fremen like that. Their goal is to exploit the Fremen. The Atreides may seem like heroic good guys, like House Stark in space, but throughout the book, they use immoral, manipulative strategies, and we're invited to question their morality. In the movie, Chaney asks, who will our next oppressors be? In the movie, Paul complains that he doesn't get to take risks and have adventures. He questions whether he even wants to be a duke and to lead the Atreides. Leto is understanding and says he loves Paul no matter what. It's a touching moment of unconditional love between father and son, but in the book we don't see anything like this. The Atreides are more formal and distant and serious in the book, and Paul does not question his duty to their house. The Atreides in the book are an ancient dynasty in a deadly planetary conflict, and they are not fucking around. While the movie humanizes the Atreides and makes them feel more like a normal, relatable family, the Atreides get a visit from Gaius Helen Mahayam. Gaius is a Reverend Mother, a special high-ranking Bene Gesserit who has expanded her mind using drugs. Reverend Mothers have access to the memories of their ancestors and of other Reverend Mothers. Gaius was Jessica's teacher back at the Bene Gesserit school, and now she's the personal truth-sayer of the Emperor. He uses her for her ability to detect lies. So Gaius is a powerful, important person, and she has complicated loyalties to the Emperor and to Jessica and to the Bene Gesserit. Gaius gives Paul a test. Paul puts his hand in a box that causes terrible pain, but if he moves his hand, Gaius will kill him with a needle called the Gom Jabbar. So this is a test of self-control. Someone without self-control, like an animal, will instinctively move away from the pain and will die. To survive, you have to withstand the pain, control your body and mind, master your fear and your instincts. The Bene Gesserit believe that this ability to act consciously and to choose, to think long-term, not just in the moment, is what separates humans from animals. They give this test to everyone they train, so that only responsible, conscious humans gain their power. So anyone who fails this test, they kill. Before the test, we see the Atreides bullhead, because like the old Duke with the bull and later with Arrakis, Paul faces deadly danger in this test. When Jessica was trained as a Bene Gesserit, she took this test too, so she knows the pain Paul is feeling and is terrified he might die. To calm herself, she recites the litany against fear. Fear is the mind killer, but the fear will pass through me and I will remain. The Bene Gesserit train to calm their emotions and focus their mind, and Jessica's training helps Paul pass this test. Paul has self-control. He is human, so he withstands the pain and lives. In the movie, he also has fiery visions of the upcoming Harkonnen attack. Then we learn about the Bene Gesserit's secret plan. For thousands of years, the Bene Gesserit have manipulated the genetic lines of noble families like the Atreides. They breed certain people with other people, often by marriage to Bene Gesserits like Jessica. Even the Emperor has a Bene Gesserit wife, controlling his reproduction. They select and combine certain genes, trying to produce a superhuman called the Kwisatz Haderach. This chosen one will be able to see into the future and the past better than any Bene Gesserit. Because Reverend Mothers like Gaius can only access the memories of their female ancestors. The Kwisatz Haderach will access all memories. He'll be a male Reverend Mother whose powerful mind will guide humanity. The name Kwisatz Haderach is borrowed from a real Hebrew term, meaning to shorten the way between two places. So the Bene Gesserit want to create the Chosen One, but Jessica has messed with their plan, because the Bene Gesserit wanted Jessica to have a daughter, not a son. That daughter was going to marry a Harkonnen, and their child would have been the Kwisatz Haderach. But Jessica, with her Bene Gesserit body control, chose to have a son, Paul, instead, because Leto wanted a son and Jessica wanted to make him happy. She chose her family over her duty to the Bene Gesserit. Jessica hopes that Paul will be the Kwisatz Haderach instead, but Gaius is doubtful. Their ancient plan is now uncertain. So Paul might be the Chosen One, and he's not happy about it. It feels weird and gross that he's the product of the Bene Gesserit's human breeding program, their manipulative, eugenic plan. In the book, he feels an offense against his instinct for rightness. He questions Gaius, thinks she's a fatuous old witch full of meaningless platitudes. In other sci-fi stories, the hero's magical mentors are good and wise and pure, like Obi-Wan and Gandalf the White. But Gaius is a creepy witch in a black robe who works for the Emperor who's trying to kill Paul's dad. The Bene Gesserit are a shadowy political cult, and their plan to artificially create the Chosen One seems sinister and dark. In the book, Paul feels that he is infected with a terrible purpose that he doesn't understand. So what is Paul's destiny, and is it really a good thing? Dune is about questioning the whole idea of heroes, religions, politicians, predictions, and plans. It's about the danger of anything that reduces our ability to think for ourselves. One of Paul's teachers is Gurney Halleck. Gurney is a legendary fighter, like one of the best in the universe. He's also a musician and a poet, a minstrel warrior who plays an instrument called a baliset. They did film a baliset scene for the movie, but it was cut. In the book, Gurney often sings and quotes poetry and wise scripture and dirty lyrics. His charming words and music help the Atreides win allies and influence people. Gurney is described as an ugly lump of a man. He's got a big red scar across his face, and a burning hatred for the Harkonnens. Because in the book, Gurney was once a slave of the Harkonnens. The beast Raban killed Gurney's family and gave him his scar, so Gurney wants revenge. Gurney says in the movie that the Harkonnens are so brutal that they're not human. The Harkonnens are often described as animals or beasts ruled by their impulses, which contrasts with the idea of humans with conscious self-control. Paul and Gurney train at fighting using shields. Shields are force fields that can stop any fast-moving object, but a slow blade can get through. Guns and explosives are useless against shields, so that's why soldiers in Dune fight with swords and knives instead. The trick to shield fighting is to outsmart, outmaneuver, and distract your opponent so you can kill with a sneaky, slow attack. So, like everything in Dune, even the sword fights are smart and strategic, like a chess game. Paul says that he's not in the mood for fighting, but Gurney says you must always be ready, no matter how you feel. So just like with the Gom Jabbar test, this is about self-control. To survive the deadly blade, you must master your emotions, your body, and mind. One of Paul's other teachers is Duncan Idaho, who is also a legendary fighter. He's a swordmaster of the Ginaz, a military genius. He's super hot, and is fiercely loyal to the Atreides. Duncan is a close friend to Paul, almost like a big brother. In the movie, Paul tells Duncan about the dreams he's been having of the future, of this Fremen girl, Cheney, and of Duncan dying on Arrakis. These prescient visions are part of Paul's power as the potential Kwisatz Haderach. In the movie, Duncan tells Paul not to focus too much on dreams. He says everything important happens when we're awake. Because Dune is about the power of thoughts and visions, but it also warns us not to get too sucked into our own minds, our assumptions and plans. The mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience. The deepest truths and the joy and meaning in life come from living in the present. Before he leaves his homeworld, Paul walks a Caladan beach. Caladan is a planet of water, to contrast the harsh, dry deserts of Arrakis. Caladan is beautiful, plentiful, a paradise, but the book says that the comforts of Caladan made the Atreides go soft. Life was too easy. They got undisciplined. Dune says that people need adversity and hard times in order to grow and achieve our potential, and Arrakis is the ultimate challenge. It's a test, like the Gom Jabbar, like the bull. Now Paul goes into the fire. Will Arrakis forge him stronger, like the Fremen, or will Paul burn? The Atreides arrive on Arrakis, and this guy blasts a bagpipe solo. When the people of Arrakis see Paul and Jessica, they shout Lisan al-Gaib, which means the voice from the outer world. Because there's a prophecy on Arrakis that there will come a leader, the child of a Bene Gesserit, who will lead Arrakis to freedom. Paul and Jessica seem to fit this prophecy. But thing is, this prophecy is a lie. It was made up by the Bene Gesserit. The Bene Gesserit have a whole system for this called the Missionaria Protectiva. For thousands of years, they have spread specific religious ideas or infectious superstitions all over the universe. Particular religious signs and sayings are planted in local cultures, so if a Bene Gesserit is ever on one of these planets, they can use those signs and sayings to gain power over people. Dune author Frank Herbert said this was inspired by missionaries in the real world, who use religion to manipulate and exploit other cultures. So the people of Arrakis hope that Paul and Jessica are the chosen ones who will free them, but really, the Lisan al-Gaib prophecy is a cynical tool used by the Bene Gesserit to control people. The Atreides move into their new home in the city of Arrakeen, and Jessica hires a Fremen woman called Mapes to be a housekeeper. Not all the people of Arrakis are Fremen, like the people of the cities and the villages aren't Fremen. The Fremen are their own specific culture who live out in the desert, a renegade will-o'-the-sand people who live outside the control of the Imperium. Fremen all have blue eyes because their environment is saturated with spice, and spice is colored blue in the books. Fremen have a reputation for being fierce and dangerous. They compose poems to their knives. The Harkonnens and the Emperor see the Fremen as scum and barbarians who aren't worth considering. They think that there are only a few thousand Fremen living on the edge of the desert. But the Atreides think there could be lots more Fremen, and that they could be more powerful than they seem. So the Fremen are a mystery at the start of the book, and we gradually learn more about them. Mapes has the honorary title Shadout, which means well dipper, because water is super important in the Fremen desert culture. And Mapes isn't just here for a job interview. She came to test Jessica, to see if she really fits the prophecy of the Lisan al-Gaib. So Mapes shows Jessica a crysknife, a blade made from the tooth of a sandworm. And she asks Jessica what is the meaning of this knife. Jessica says it's a maker, and Mapes gets all excited because the Fremen call sandworms makers. So this seems to show that Jessica must know the secrets of Fremen religion, and she and Paul must be the Lisan al-Gaib. But thing is, in the book, Jessica is bullshitting Mapes. Jessica doesn't know the religious meaning of the crysknife. She was gonna say that the knife is a maker of death, to mean it's just a weapon. But Mapes interrupted Jessica once she heard what she wanted to hear. Jessica plays along and acts like she knows all this Fremen religious stuff, using signs and sayings from the Missionaria Protectiva, but inside Jessica knows this is a sham. Jessica exploits Mapes' religion to manipulate her and win her loyalty. Dune is about the danger of religion, how it can warp our thinking and control us. But this isn't just about the Atreides using the Fremen. In the book, after Jessica leaves, Mapes says to herself that Jessica is the one, poor thing. Mapes pities Jessica and knows things about her future. It's hinted that just as the Atreides use the Fremen may be using the Atreides for their own goals. Paul is attacked by a hunter-seeker, a weapon of assassination. It's like a flying remote-controlled needle, a ravening sliver of metal that can burrow into flesh to strike the heart. The hunter-seeker is controlled remotely by a Harkonnen assassin. The camera on the seeker is bad, so it relies on motion to find its target. So to survive, Paul has to stand perfectly still while the deadly needle points at his face. So this is just like the Gom Jabbar test. Paul faces a deadly needle, and to survive, he has to stay still, mastering his fear and his body. Meanwhile, in the book, Jessica explores her new home, and she finds a mysterious door locked with a palm reader, which is a lock that only opens to the shape of a particular person's hand. So Jessica picks the lock by subtly changing the shape of her own palm, using her Bene Gesserit muscle control. In other sci-fi stories, characters might use hacking or magic or raw strength to break a lock, but Dune is about the power of the mind, so that's how Jessica opens the door. Inside, Jessica finds a conservatory, a place full of lush plants and water on this dry desert world. It's beautiful, but it's a terrible waste. This much water could sustain 1,000 lives on Arrakis, but instead it's used for the pleasure of the rich and powerful. In the movie, there's a scene with these palm trees, which are also a waste of precious water. The gardener says that the waste is okay because the trees are sacred, but in the books, these trees aren't sacred. The people of Arrakis look on these trees with envy and hate for the waste of water. But the movie takes away that moral complication and instead emphasizes the mystical connection between Arrakis' people and its environment. Anyway, in the conservatory, Jessica finds a hidden message from another Bene Gesserit. A message so secret that it's written on a leaf in Braille, and it warns her that there's a traitor among the Atreides, working for the Harkonnens. In the book, Thufir also gets a message warning of the traitor. This message was planted by the Harkonnens, and they deliberately trick Thufir into thinking that Jessica is the traitor. The Harkonnens divide the Atreides in the book, turn them against each other, to distract from the real traitor, Dr. Yui, who is working for the Harkonnens. When Thufir tells Leto this, Leto doesn't believe that his beloved Jessica is plotting against him, but he decides to pretend that he thinks Jessica is the traitor to make the Harkonnens think they tricked him while he looks for the real traitor. So the plot quickly gets complicated in the book. Dune is full of these plans within plans. The story is a chess game where only the best minds survive. And there's a sense from the start of the book that Leto is doomed to fail. That he's a man snared by destiny, caught in an inescapable trap. Leto has death thoughts, thinking about how he'll die, and Paul is shocked to see this vulnerability in his father. Paul sees that Leto makes mistakes, and he realizes that his dad won't be around forever. Part of Paul growing up and becoming a man is seeing the flaws and the mortality in his father. The Atreides' takeover of Arrakis doesn't go well. The Harkonnens left behind broken equipment, so the Atreides can't harvest much spice yet, and they're still expecting an attack from the Emperor's Sardaukar and the Harkonnens. Leto's great hope is the Fremen. Leto sent Duncan to try to make an alliance with the Fremen. Originally, the Dune movie started with a scene of Duncan landing on Arrakis. So Duncan meets the Fremen, and he learns that the Fremen live in caves called Sieches. There are millions of Fremen living deep in the desert, way more than the Harkonnens and the Emperor realize. The Fremen are also technologically advanced, manufacturing devices to help them survive in the desert. Duncan also learns that the Fremen are deadly in combat. So the Harkonnens and the Emperor are too arrogant and prejudiced to see the potential of the Fremen. But the Atreides are open-minded and willing to learn, which opens up the possibility of victory. So the Atreides meet Stilgar, the leader of a Fremen siege. The book emphasizes Stilgar's aura of power and his commanding voice. He's an impressive figure. Unlike the arrogant Harkonnens, Leto shows respect for Stilgar and his people. So Stilgar shows respect for Leto by spitting on the table, because in Fremen desert culture, giving moisture from the body is a sign of respect. In the book, Duncan helped the Fremen fight some Harkonnens, so Stilgar invites Duncan to join his Fremen, while also serving Leto, representing an alliance between Stilgar and the Atreides. Stilgar gives Duncan a crysknife, the sacred Maker's blade, and it's mentioned that the Harkonnens are offering a huge bounty to anyone who can bring them a crysknife. Because anyone who has a crysknife and has spice blue eyes would appear to be a Fremen. They could infiltrate any siege. And in the book, the Harkonnen Mentat, Paiter, has blue eyes because of his spice addiction. So it seems that the Harkonnens want a crysknife so that Paiter can infiltrate the Fremen so that he can kill the Atreides if the Atreides hide with the Fremen. So this is another deadly subplot hidden within the story. But the meeting with Stilgar goes well, and there's hope for a larger alliance between the Atreides and the Fremen. The Atreides meet Liet Kynes. Kynes is an ecologist, or planetologist, working for the Emperor to study the environment of Arrakis. She's also the Judge of the Change, meaning it's her job to make sure everyone follows the rules when the Harkonnens leave Arrakis and the Atreides take over. But secretly, the Emperor has ordered Kynes to help betray the Atreides and to let the Harkonnens attack them. But Kynes' loyalties are even more complicated than that. In the book, Liet Kynes is a man. Kynes' father was Pardo Kynes, the previous Imperial ecologist, and Liet Kynes' mother was a Fremen woman. So Liet Kynes was raised as a Fremen on Arrakis. Liet Kynes also married a Fremen, and they had a child called Chani. So Chani is Kynes' daughter in the movie, as well as in the book. So Kynes works for the Emperor, but Kynes is really loyal to the Fremen. Kynes leads the Fremen under the name Liet. In the book, Liet and Kynes seem to be two different people at first. The Atreides think the mysterious Liet might be the name of a Fremen god. It's only later that we find out that Liet the Fremen leader and Kynes the planetologist are the same person. So there are two sides to Kynes' identity, Imperial and Fremen, outsider and native, scientist and leader. Kynes gives the Atreides stillsuits. Stillsuits are special outfits for the desert that cool the body and stop it from losing moisture. All of your sweat, pee, and poop is captured by the suit and reprocessed back into drinking water. Because without a stillsuit, in the desert's heat, you'll soon lose your moisture and die. The book goes into lots of detail about all the different technologies people use to adapt to Arrakis' environment. Kynes shows the Atreides how to wear the stillsuits properly. It's a difficult, technical thing for someone who's never used one before. But Paul somehow already knows how to wear a stillsuit properly, and that shocks Kynes because it fits part of the prophecy of the Lisan al-Gaib. He shall know your ways as though born to them. Paul's personality and his words and his ability to see the truth also fit the prophecy. In the book, Kynes thinks of himself as a rational, skeptical scientist who doesn't believe in superstitions, but Paul does fit the prophecy, so it seems like there might be some truth in the prophecy, mixed in with the Bene Gesserit's manipulations.
I'm Sarah, one of the survivors after the Zerg consumed Earth, and now I'm a senior pilot in the Human Federation fighting against them. We once looked down on this seemingly weak species, underestimating their insatiable hunger and incredible ability to evolve. We paid a heavy price for that mistake. After realizing our folly, we set up the strongest defenses on the Martian front, equipped with our most advanced mechs, laser weapons, and turrets. While we managed to achieve some victories early on, the Zerg's establishment of their tunneling network has led to an endless wave of attacks, putting us back on the defensive. We urgently need a clever and brave commander to help us launch a counterattack.
The Atreides fly out to the desert to learn about spice harvesting. These flying machines are called ornithopters, which is a real word for flying machines with flapping wings. The book describes thopters as looking like birds with feathered wings. Harvester machines extract spice from the sand using centrifuges. In the book, they look like giant beetles with snouts and leg-like tracks. The movie uses a simple, industrial look for its technology, but the books have a more fantastical and colourful 60s sci-fi vibe. The vibrations from spice harvesting always attract sandworms, so when a worm comes, harvesters are flown to safety by a carryall. But this time, the carryall breaks. In the book, it doesn't turn up at all because of Harkonnen's sabotage. So Duke Leto heroically risks his life to save the workers from the sandworm. This shows that Leto genuinely cares about protecting people. Human life matters more to him than money, and that's what makes him different to the Harkonnens. But Leto isn't totally selfless, he is a politician. So, in the book, he and Gurney give the workers a bonus payment, and he says it's for public relations, to make people like Leto. Kynes points out that Leto floods Arrakis with propaganda, telling people to love the good Duke. And Leto admits that propaganda is a big part of why his men are so loyal. His image as a heroic leader is partly an act, a mask for political advantage. So the Atreides do show some real heroism, but that image is partly a cynical tool that they use to control people. In the book, the Atreides host a dinner party with important people on Arrakis, businessmen, politicians, smugglers. It gives the sense of a larger world on Arrakis. This is a planet with lots of different players with their own plans and motivations. When the Harkonnens were in charge here, they had a custom where they deliberately waste water, dumping it onto towels on the ground, then allowing poor people to beg for drops of moisture. It was cruel and demeaning, so Leto stops this custom and gives beggars water instead. And Jessica declares that the conservatory that wastes so much water will now be held in trust for all the people of Arrakis. So again, the Atreides do good with gestures of respect and generosity. Leto says that he's gonna change things on Arrakis. But does he really meaningfully make things better? Like, sure, he gives water to a few beggars, but he does nothing to change this fundamentally unfair political system. And right after banning the water custom, Leto just does a different water-wasting ritual instead. So maybe these gestures are just more propaganda to make the Atreides look good. Dune is critical of politicians who appear liberal and progressive, but are really just aristocrats protecting their own power. Author Frank Herbert said that the Atreides are admirable, but they act with the same arrogance towards common folk as do their enemies. While the Atreides act honest and honorable in public, they do some sneaky bullshit on the down low. Like, the Atreides forge signatures to take property and evict the families of people who worked for the Harkonnens. The Atreides use Thufir, who is a master of assassins whose ruthless methods bring death and deceit wherever he goes. And Leto's whole plan here is to exploit the Fremen as his army and exploit the land for spice. Leto says that he makes moral compromises for political gain. He says that the honorable Atreides banner could come to mean many evil things. So the Atreides are more moral than the brutal Harkonnens, but their power is still fundamentally based on coercion and force. Like, this dinner party is fancy and glamorous, but it's also very tense. People are nervous about getting poisoned, so inside a chandelier there's a hidden device that detects poison. The Atreides use secret hand signals to ready their soldiers during dinner. This shows the fakeness of political power. Behind the formality and glamour there is always the deadly threat of violence. Some of the most powerful people at the party are those who control water on Arrakis, because everyone needs water to live, and on this planet there's barely any of it. Paul has to explain to someone what drowning is and what boats are, because there isn't enough water on Arrakis for anyone to ever drown or use a boat. So alongside spice, water is a precious resource here. Author Frank Herbert said the value of water on Arrakis is equivalent to oil, and the way this natural resource shapes politics and culture shows the overarching, constant importance of the environment. No one is completely separated from natural forces like water scarcity. not the poor begging for drops of moisture, nor the politicians who compete to control it. One of the most important characters in Dune is the planet itself. So everyone eats fine food and makes small talk, and secretly plots to destroy each other. Jessica realizes that a Spacing Guild guy is working with the Harkonnens, and we learn that the Harkonnens are smuggling laser guns to Arrakis. Women try to seduce Paul, a water seller bickers with Kynes, and we get a sense of mysterious power from Kynes, connected to Kynes' relationship with the Fremen. The Atreides talk about changing the environment of Arrakis to give it more water and plants, and Kynes acts weird and secretive about whether this is possible. And this whole time, Leto is pretending to suspect Jessica as a traitor, and he's super stressed about it. So at this party, the plots thicken, the tension rises, and there's a growing sense of danger to the Atreides. All night, the bullhead looms above, with Atreides blood on its horns. Later in the book, Duncan gets drunk. He's stressed and homesick on this dangerous alien world. So he gets wasted and complains, and he reveals to Jessica that Thufir thinks she's a traitor. So Jessica finally understands why Leto has been acting weird and distant with her, pretending to suspect her. And so she goes and confronts Thufir. She tells Thufir that she's not a traitor, and she criticizes Thufir's mentat logic, saying he is good at analyzing the world around him, but he fails to analyze his own thoughts and feelings. She says he's biased against her for being a Bene Gesserit, and that he's jealous of her closeness with Leto. She brags about her power and uses her voice on Thufir. Thufir gets angry too, and he considers killing Jessica. This infighting is exactly what the Harkonnens want, and Jessica realizes this. But she and Thufir fail to work together because of their emotions. Jessica and Thufir are a Bene Gesserit and a Mentat, both highly trained, intelligent superhumans. But no matter how smart you are, everyone has human weaknesses. Pride, jealousy, anger, fear, biases. Their emotions overwhelm their rational minds. And so Jessica and Thufir fail to find the real traitor and fail to save their family. Leto finds out about this fight between Jessica and Thufir, and he feels bad about acting suspicious of the woman he loves. He regrets that he never married Jessica, because technically Jessica is Leto's concubine, not his wife. Leto stays unmarried because it's politically useful to seem like he's available for a marriage alliance, but really, he loves Jessica and wouldn't marry anyone else. Leto goes to tell Jessica the truth and to apologize about pretending to suspect her, but tragically, before he can tell her, Leto is attacked by the real traitor, Yueh. So Yueh is the doctor for the Atreides family, and in the book, the Atreides think that it's impossible for him to be a traitor because Yueh is a Suk school doctor with imperial conditioning. Imperial conditioning is a kind of mental training that supposedly makes it impossible for a Suk doctor to kill or betray their masters. This diamond tattoo on Yueh's forehead is the mark of a Suk doctor. But the Harkonnens broke Yueh's conditioning. They captured Yueh's wife, Wana, and they tortured her to blackmail Yueh into obeying them. So Yueh betrays the Atreides, but he does it for a good reason, to protect his wife. Yueh doesn't want to hurt the Atreides, he loves them. So throughout the book, Yueh feels conflicted, guilty, and stressed, keeping his secret. Yueh thinks that after betraying Leto, he'll be remembered by history as a terrible villain, and he's right. Each chapter of the Dune book starts with a quote or excerpt from an in-universe history book, written years after the events of the story. They give us glimpses of how future historians think about these characters, and in these books, Yueh is remembered as a name black in treachery. A child's history says 1,000,000 deaths were not enough for Yueh. So this shows how history doesn't capture the full story of people's lives. Yueh is a traitor, but he's not some one-dimensional villain. He's a complex, layered character with his own feelings and perspective. Earlier in the book, Yueh gives Paul an orange Catholic Bible. He thinks he gives Paul the gift of religion before he betrays Paul. So, Yui thinks, Paul will go where Yui cannot go, meaning that Paul will go to heaven, but Yui thinks himself damned to hell. Yui talks with Jessica, which is very dangerous for Yui, because as a Bene Gesserit, Jessica can read people's feelings and detect lies. So Yui has to carefully control his words and emotions to hide that he's a traitor. He masks his secret by expressing his real grief for his wife Wanna. Jessica opens up too, and they really connect emotionally. So much that Yui almost decides to tell Jessica the truth that he's working for the Harkonnens. Jessica sees that Yui is hiding something from her, but she decides not to investigate because Yui is such a good friend and she feels she should trust him. So this tragic, heartfelt scene makes us feel sorry for Yui before his betrayal. Yui kills Mapes. He hits Leto with a paralyzing dart. He gives Paul and Jessica sleeping drugs so they can be captured. And Yui turns off the Atreides house shields so the Harkonnens and Sardaukar can attack. But Yui also betrays the Harkonnens. He installs a fake tooth into Leto's mouth, a weapon filled with poison gas. He tells Leto to use it to kill the Baron, to get revenge for the torture of his wife. So the Harkonnens and Sardaukar attack, and the Atreides are shocked by how many soldiers arrive. The Baron paid the Spacing Guild a huge amount of money for troop transport, like 60 years worth of Arrakis's entire income. The Baron has been planning this for a long time, and he takes no chances to crush the Atreides. In the movie, the Harkonnens use these slow bombs, which decelerate so they can penetrate shields, while in the book, the Harkonnens use old-fashioned explosive artillery against Atreides men hiding in caves. It's a surprise secret weapon to use such ancient technology. The Harkonnens kill or scatter all Atreides on the planet, and they stamp out resistance by cutting up the desert with laser guns. They want total extermination of the Atreides. In the book, there's a scene where the Baron and Paiter have Jessica captive. The Baron had promised to give Jessica to Paiter as his prisoner or slave, which is terrifying because Paiter is a sadistic torturer and killer. Paiter is a twisted mentat. The Baron and the Tleilaxu have corrupted him, made him an animal with violent, selfish desires. And this makes Paiter a less rational and less effective thinker. Like, the Baron convinces Paiter not to take Jessica, and instead promises him control of Arrakis. And Jessica sees that the Baron is lying and manipulating Paiter, but with his twisted mentat mind, Paiter doesn't see this. And the Baron fails to see how dangerous Paiter is to him. So the Baron and Paiter are both smart, dangerous people, and this is their moment of victory. But Jessica sees that they're kind of incompetent. The Harkonnens' minds are so clouded and distracted by their emotions and their arrogance and greed. They're not focused and disciplined like Jessica and Paul's powerful human minds. The Baron wants Leto Atreides and all his family dead. The Emperor and the Bene Gesserit are okay with Leto dying, but they don't want Jessica and Paul killed as well, because Jessica and Paul are important to the Bene Gesserit breeding plan. And under the rules of warfare in Dune, murdering entire noble families is generally frowned upon. So the Baron can't kill Jessica and Paul directly, because the truthsayer Gaius could interrogate him and learn the truth. So instead, the Baron tries to kill Jessica and Paul indirectly. He suggests that Paiter may choose to dump Jessica and Paul in the desert so that the desert will kill them. So then the Baron can say truthfully that he didn't kill Jessica and Paul. The Baron twists the truth with word trickery. Dune explores how words and language can be deceptive and can limit our thinking. So some of the most talkative characters in Dune are the bad guys. Like, in the new movie, the Baron doesn't say much, but in the book, the Baron never shuts up. He's constantly indulging in theatrical, self-aggrandizing speeches, while the heroic Atreides are men of few words. In Dune, the deepest truths are not expressed with words, but must be experienced firsthand. So Paul and Jessica are sent to the desert to die. One of the guards is deaf, and Jessica is gagged, so she can't use her voice power to control the men. Paul is not as good at the voice as Jessica is, but he manages to command the men to ungag Jessica so she can use her voice to control and kill them. In the movie, Paul does some cute footwork to trip a guy, while in the book, Paul kicks the dude so hard that his heart stops. We see Yui's diamond symbol here on the Thopter, because Yui has pulled some strings to help Paul and Jessica escape. He hides a Fremen desert survival kit in the Thopter, and he arranges for Duncan to find them in the desert. So Yui is forced to betray the Atreides, but he also does everything he can to help save Paul and Jessica. And then Yui faces the Baron. The deal was that Yui would help the Baron defeat the Atreides, and then the Baron would free Yui's wife Wanna, let him join her. But the Baron just kills Yui so that he and Wanna can join each other in death. Again, the Baron twists the truth with word trickery. So, in the movie, it seems like Yui just failed. The Baron beat him. But in the book, it's different. Because Yui never really believed that the Baron would give his wife back. He thought she was probably already dead. But he needed to know for certain that Wanna is free from her suffering. Wanna was a Bene Gesserit, and she taught Yui some truth sense skills. So, by facing the Baron in person and reading his face, Yui learns that yes, Wanna is definitely dead. She's free from Harkonnen torture, and with that knowledge, Yui can die satisfied. Yui also succeeds in helping Paul and Jessica escape, and he gives Leto the poison tooth to attack the Baron. Yui says that Leto was gonna die anyway, with the Emperor and the Harkonnens against him, so at least Yui gives Leto a chance to bring the Baron down with him. So Yui feels that he succeeded. He outsmarted the Baron and helped the Atreides, so with his final breath, Yui is defiant and triumphant. History remembers Yui as an evil villain, but in a way, his death is a heroic self-sacrifice, dying for his Wanna and for the Atreides. The Baron faces Leto, helpless before him. He's wanted this for a long time. House Harkonnen and House Atreides have hated each other for 10,000 years, ever since an Atreides banished a Harkonnen for cowardice after a battle. Now the Baron can finally destroy his ancient enemies. But in the book, the Baron's victory feels sour. He's disturbed by Yui's defiance, and he finds out that Paul and Jessica have escaped. The Baron feels frustrated and uncertain, so he seeks comfort in food. Dune is about the importance of self-control, mastering your mind and body. So the villain, the Baron, is someone who's totally controlled by his body's desires. The Baron constantly eats. He is always hungry and thirsty. He has evil sexual desires. In the book, the Baron drugs and rapes slave boys. The Baron is so ruled by his urges that he can't even control the movements of his body. The Baron's hands are constantly touching and fiddling compulsively. The Baron is a beast, ruled by his hunger and his lust. He is the opposite of the Bene Gesserit ideal of human self-control. But while the Baron can't control himself, he does control others. He treats people like objects to be used and exploited. He uses Yui. He uses Raban. He plans to kill Paita when he outlives his usefulness. He thinks of the people of Arrakis as slaves, as no more than a labor pool. He thinks of his men and of his enemies as bees and rabbits, or as sheep and chickens, and of himself as a carnivore. The Baron reduces people to animals and objects. He dehumanizes everyone around him, and that's what makes him the ultimate evil in a story about the human spirit. In Leto's last moments, he remembers happy days with his family on Caladan. His last thought is, "The day the flesh shapes, and the flesh the day shapes," which suggests that our experiences and environment make us who we are, and that we make our experiences and our environment in return. Leto feels interconnected with the universe when he dies, so there's a legend that in the instant he died, a meteor streaked through the sky on Caladan. Leto uses his poison tooth to try to kill the Baron. The gas kills Piter, but the Baron survives because he has his shield on. In the movie, he's still hurt by the gas, so he needs to have a medical black goo bath at a day spa to recover. The black goo isn't in the book, but it is in the old David Lynch Dune movie, so maybe it's a reference to that. Or it could be a reference to this shot in Apocalypse Now. Or maybe it's a reference to the couch in It's Always Sunny, who knows.
At Creo Legal, we're dealing with contracts daily. With Adobe Acrobat AI Assistant, we can get to the main points of a document faster and have the most relevant information extracted in minutes. All we have to do is ask.
When I think about how I divide my time, it's very carefully. I'm Alex Diaz. I'm a professional marketer in Seattle. Thinking about communication can be exhausting. Sometimes you find yourself hitting a wall. And I love AI Compose because you write your intention and automatically this paragraph comes out that you can play with. It is honestly like magic. Grammarly will give you confidence that whatever message you're trying to send comes across as you intend. Download Grammarly for free.
I am overburdened.
Paul and Jessica take shelter in a still tent, and Paul's consciousness expands. The effects of the spice, of his training, of the shock of his father's death, it all comes together to unlock a powerful new awareness. His mind now perceives every detail of the world around him. He processes and computes vast data, like a mentat, but more. Paul has visions of the future, not just in dreams, but in waking awareness. The veil is ripped away to reveal naked time. He doesn't see just one certain future. He sees many different possibilities, branching paths, ever-changing and undulating like ocean waves. He doesn't see everything. Much of the future is hidden from him. But Paul sees many things, like that Jessica is pregnant and that her daughter will be Saint Alia of the Knife. He sees that he and Jessica will stay on Arrakis and that their eyes will turn blue from exposure to spice. Jessica thinks that Paul must be the Kwisatz Haderach of the Bene Gesserit plan, but Paul says that he's something else, something unexpected, a seed. And he again feels his sense of terrible purpose. Paul sees a future of religious war, of fanatical legions spreading violence across the universe in the Atreides' name, with him as their messianic leader. The book calls this war a jihad, or crusade, and connects it to a primordial human need to spread our genes across the universe, to evolve and diversify the species through chaos and upheaval. It's war as a collective orgasm. Paul wants to prevent this terrible, violent future, and in the book, he's horrified by how his own mind has changed. All this knowledge and cold logic separates Paul from his emotions. His father is dead, and he wants to grieve, but he feels nothing. His transcendence takes away some of his humanity. Paul feels that he's a monster and a freak, and he blames Jessica, because Jessica's training is part of what caused this change in him. Jessica suddenly feels afraid of this powerful mind that she helped create. In the book, Paul considers joining the Spacing Guild, because they would appreciate his powerful, prescient mind. But he decides not to, because those guys are weird and gross. Instead, he says he and Jessica will join the Fremen, and they will call him Muad'Dib, the one who points the way. Muad'Dib is the name of this kangaroo mouse, which Paul sees in the movie a couple times. This mouse is well adapted to survive in the deserts of Arrakis, and the mouse has a special meaning in Fremen mythology, because one of Arrakis's 2 moons has markings that look like the Muad'Dib mouse. So Paul emerges from the womb-like tent reborn. He has transformed and expanded his mind, and he is no longer a child, but a man, the new Duke Atreides. Now, at last, Paul can mourn his father. Paul and Jessica meet up with Duncan, and they take refuge with Kynes. The Emperor ordered Kynes to help destroy the Atreides, so Kynes is taking a huge risk by protecting them. But Kynes saw Leto's heroism and leadership. Kynes saw that Paul fits the Fremen prophecies, and Kynes saw that the Atreides are interested in changing Arrakis's environment. Kynes takes the Atreides to an old ecological station, a science lab that studies the environment of Arrakis. The book explains that Kynes' father, Pardo, taught the Fremen about ecology, the systems of life, climate, water, and animals. Pardo and the Fremen made a plan to transform the environment of Arrakis, to make it into a green planet full of water and plants. After Pardo died, Liet Kynes and the Fremen have continued to change Arrakis. They've been planting vegetation in the desert, feeding it moisture harvested from the wind, starting oases of life and water to reshape the desert. And they're doing this secretly. The Fremen have been bribing the Spacing Guild with spice to hide Fremen activity from satellites. Paul tells Kynes that he could help transform Arrakis if Paul becomes Emperor of the Universe. With his new consciousness and confidence, Paul plans a play for the throne. If Paul can prove to the other houses of the Landsraad that the Emperor attacked the Atreides, everyone would turn against the Emperor. That's the whole point of the Landsraad. It limits the Emperor's power to protect the houses. So Paul plans to blackmail the Emperor and to marry one of the Emperor's daughters to take the throne himself. Then Paul could help Kynes change Arrakis. So Paul shows great confidence and authority, but in the book he also shows humility and loyalty to Kynes. He says he'd give his life for Kynes, showing that Atreides' heroic image. And so Kynes becomes loyal to Paul. Then the Sardaukar attack, coming to capture or kill the Atreides. In the movie, the Sardaukar cut through a door with a laser gun. Laser guns are powerful weapons, but they're also super dangerous, because if a laser beam touches a shield, the shield and the laser gun explode, like a huge nuclear explosion, which kills the laser gun user as well as their target. Earlier in the book, Duncan leaves a shield as a trap to blow up a bunch of Sardaukar. So because of that, the Sardaukar avoid using laser guns here, because they're scared of hitting a shield again. To give Paul and Jessica time to escape, Duncan heroically holds off the Sardaukar and is killed. Just like in Paul's dream earlier. So this shows that Paul's visions of the future can come true. Will the Holy War come true as well? Kynes, Paul, and Jessica escape through a secret exit. In the book, they go through a whole maze with lights that guide the way but then extinguish so that the Sardaukar can't follow them. In the movie, Kynes heads into the desert and uses a device called a thumper to attract a sandworm. With these maker hooks, Kynes plans to mount and ride a sandworm to travel, which is one of the great secrets of Fremen power. But Kynes is attacked by Sardaukar because Kynes disobeyed the Emperor. But Kynes defiantly says that her true master is Shai-Hulud, which is the Fremen religious name for the sandworms. Old Father Eternity. Kynes pounds the sand like a thumper so that she and the Sardaukar are eaten by her god. It's extremely badass and demonstrates the power of the Fremen and the sandworms. But in the book, and in the old TV miniseries, Kynes' death is very different. The Harkonnens leave Kynes to die in the desert. He becomes delirious and has hallucinations of his father, Pardo. Pardo lectures Liet Kynes about their plan to change Arrakis, with all these endless scientific facts and theories to control the environment. But while Kynes thinks about controlling the environment is killing him. He's burning in the sun, birds circle above to eat him, and in the end, Kynes is killed by a spice blow, which is the explosive chemical reaction that creates spice on Arrakis. So Kynes and his father spent their lives trying to master this planet, but Kynes gets killed by the planet he tried to control. His knowledge and his science can't save him. This shows the limits of human knowledge and plans. Environmental forces, the complex, ever-changing machinations of the universe, are bigger and more chaotic than any person can control. No plan or science can tame the universe. Nature always has the last word. Paul and Jessica escape by flying into a storm. Arrakis dust storms are deadly, with winds that can cut metal like butter and strip flesh to bone. It should be certain death, but with Paul's new consciousness in the book, he can perceive the forces of the storm. The turbulence, the vortexes, all the tiny gusts and fronts. He feels all these motions and sees the right path to fly to safety. In the movie, Paul has a vision of this Fremen man, Jamis. Jamis says that to understand a process, you must flow with it. This is basically Dune's philosophy of how to think. The world is complicated, everything's interconnected and always changing, so you can't focus on just one perspective or one set of data. You can't rely on one narrow plan like Kynes did. Your thinking needs to continually evolve with the changing flow of reality. And that's how Paul and Jessica survive this storm, by seeing and moving with its flow. Just as Jessica and Paul master their fear by allowing it to flow through them. In the movie, Paul hears the voices of Bene Gesserits telling him to let go, and so he lets go of the Thopter controls and he loses consciousness and somehow survives. It's like an act of faith in the movie. But the Dune book is not about faith. It's not about losing consciousness. It's about awareness and choice, and so that's how Paul and Jessica survive in the book. The Harkonnens think Paul and Jessica died in the storm, and that their victory is finally complete. So the Baron puts Raban back in charge of Arrakis, and he tells him to squeeze, to exploit and oppress the people of Arrakis to make as much money as possible, to make back the money that they spent on their attack. The beast Raban is happy to be a brutal dictator again. In the book, he enthusiastically suggests exterminating every person on Arrakis, and he asks which weapons he's allowed to use on the population. The Baron just orders Raban to kill all the Fremen. In the book, it's the Sardaukar who do that. But in the book, Raban says that it might not be easy to kill the Fremen. In the book, we see the Fremen kick the Sardaukar's ass a couple times, and characters are shocked by how deadly the Fremen are. But the Baron doesn't listen and arrogantly dismisses the Fremen as an irrelevant rabble. Raban is afraid of the Baron. The book says that the Baron usually won't kill family members, but he does inflict painful punishments, so Raban obeys. In the book, there's a lot more going on in the Harkonnen plotline, with other important characters, which we should see in the next Dune movie. Paul and Jessica travel the desert. Living off their own water in stillsuits, they begin a true Arakeen existence. The rhythm of the environment shapes their movements. It changes when they sleep, and changes how they think. They get a feel for the textures of the desert, all the different kinds of sand. Pea sand, drum sand, flour and grit and dust and powder. The desert looks like an ocean full of moon-silvered waves. Author Frank Herbert got the idea for Dune when he was researching sand dunes in Oregon. He learned that dunes move and flow like water, just slower. That began his research into environments and history and religion and linguistics that led to Dune. Paul starts to like Arrakis, but Jessica just misses Caladan and misses Leto. In the book, Jessica gets buried under a sandslide, so she uses her Bene Gesserit training to hold her body in a coma so she doesn't suffocate, while Paul uses his powerful mind to figure out where she's buried and saves her. He does a cute chemistry experiment, mixing battery acid with spice to make a foam to hold back the sand. It's a fun little science fiction problem-solving scene, using Paul's mind and simple tools to survive. To find the Fremen, Paul and Jessica have to cross an expanse of open sand, which is super dangerous because of the deadly worms. Sandworms swim these sands like sharks in the sea. But Paul and Jessica face this danger, just like the old Duke with the bull. Author Frank Herbert said sandworms are like the bull in the arena, or like the archetypal dragon in the cave, guarding the treasure of spice. The worm is the monster that the hero must face. To avoid attracting a worm, they have to walk without rhythm, a sand walk that imitates the natural sounds of the desert. In the book, they also set a thumper to distract the worms, and it turns out that it's very difficult to walk without rhythm while you can hear the rhythm of the thumper. It's yet another test of control over the body and mind. Paul accidentally steps on drum sand, which makes loud vibrations, and it summons a worm, so they've got to leg it to the safety of a rock. Paul and Jessica are shocked by the size of the sandworm. In the book, its mouth is 80 meters, or 260 feet across, with crystal teeth glimmering in the moonlight, and breath that smells like cinnamon from the spice. Paul wonders about the mystery of exactly how spice and sandworms are connected. The book mentions that sandworms' bodies create oxygen, which is how the air is breathable on Arrakis without many plants making oxygen like on Earth.
How I grew the family business myself using only
QuickBooks Online!
Ano ma? I did it myself.
Tell them the truth na!
Okay. It's
QuickBooks Online. With automatic invoicing and expense tracking, we can focus on growing. QuickBooks ang galing! QuickBooks, behind every successful business.
We need to make a decision. What does the data say?
I'm not...
Why not use Monday.com's dashboards? It shows you which projects are stuck, where to spend less, and what your customers need. Check this out. This team is overloaded with work, so you can assign some of it to that team. This department's over budget, and you can check why. And this shows you what your customers buy most. It turns our data into something clear to understand and act on.
How up to date are these?
Real time.
Let's use Monday.com. Thanks for the data.
I like data.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they survive the worm, and then they face Stilgar and his Fremen, and we start to learn more about Fremen culture. In the book, Stilgar asks if Paul and Jessica are jinn, which is an Arabic word for supernatural spirits. Stilgar mentions Istisla, an Islamic term relating to the common good. Jessica thinks that the Fremen speak the language of Ilm and Fiqh, which are Arabic words for knowledge and law. Because the Fremen and their language are loosely inspired by real Arabic and Islamic cultures. Author Frank Herbert was particularly influenced by a book called The Sabers of Paradise, about Muslims in the Caucasus. It describes a religious warrior people who speak a Jacobsa language and fight against imperial Padisha invaders who live in Asich or Tabir. There are entire lines in Dune that are taken from this book. Frank was also inspired by Lawrence of Arabia, a Western man who joined with Bedouin desert tribes in their fight against the Ottoman Empire. Stilgar says that the Fremen are the Ikhwan Bedouin, which sounds like Bedouin. Frank was also inspired by the people of the Kalahari Desert and their careful use of water, so many different real cultures inspired the Fremen. In universe, the Dune book says that the Fremen are descended from Sunni Muslims in Egypt. Mizir is Arabic for Egypt, and Nilotic al-Uraba suggests the Nile and Arabia. Over thousands of years, this people's religion changed into the Zen Sunni tradition, a combination of Zen Buddhism with Sunni Islam. The Zen Sunni wanderers suffered millennia of persecution and displacement, including 9 generations of slavery on Seleucus Secundus. Eventually they settled on Arrakis and developed the unique Fremen culture, adapted to life in the desert and hardened by their suffering. Survival on Arrakis can require brutal decisions for the good of the group, so Stilgar's Fremen threaten to kill Jessica to take her water. So Jessica uses her Bene Gesserit fighting skills to kick Stilgar's ass, and Paul beats up the Fremen man Jamis. So Jessica proves that she has useful skills, and Stilgar agrees to keep her. In the book, he has some fun dialogue calling one of his men a worm-faced, crawling, sand-brained piece of lizard turd. Stilgar is charismatic and a powerful leader, dedicated to protecting his tribe. He's also very intelligent and willing to adapt to change. He asks Jessica to teach his Fremen how to fight in her weirding way, and the Fremen will teach Jessica and Paul how to survive in the desert. It will be a good exchange of teachings. Dune values knowledge and learning. In the book, Jessica does more of her Missionaria Protectiva manipulations, trying to convince the Fremen that she and Paul fit the Lisan al-Gaib prophecy. Jessica brings up Sietch Tabir, Stilgar's home, as though she has some mystical knowledge of the place, when really she just read the name on a map once. If only he knew the tricks we use, she thinks. Jessica feels a cynical bitterness at her manipulation, but she's determined to use the Fremen as an army to help Paul retake Arrakis. Paul meets Chani, and he's shocked to recognize her from his visions. In the books, Chani has an elfin face, a laughing voice, the grace of a gazelle, and she has red hair. Paul feels embarrassed that she snuck up on him with a gun, and he immediately has a crush on her. Jamis is angry that Paul beat him up, so Jamis challenges Paul, invoking the Amtal rule. Amtal means to test something until it breaks, to learn someone's true nature by pushing them to their limits, like the Gom Jabbar test. Jamis will fight Paul to the death. In the book, Jamis says this will test whether Paul and Jessica are really the Lisan al-Gaib. He argues that Jessica might be trying to make a false way among us, trying to deceive the Fremen to fit the prophecy, which she is. In the book, Jessica uses the voice on Jamis and threatens him, but the Fremen realize she's manipulating him and order her to be silent. So Paul faces Jamis alone. Paul has seen possible futures from this moment, and in most of them, Paul dies. He is at the center of a nexus in time, a storm of possibilities where the slightest mistake could change the future dramatically. There are too many branching possibilities for Paul to see a clear path to victory. The only way to survive this is with his skills and his mind and his knife. In the book, Chani gives Paul advice on how to beat Jamis, warning him about Jamis's fighting style. But in the movie, Chani says she doesn't believe in Paul and that he's gonna die, which is a fun change, making Chani more skeptical of Paul. In the movie, Chani gives Paul a crysknife, and this is the same knife that Paul kept seeing in visions. Paul saw Chani stabbing him with this knife. Will this vision come true? Paul salutes Jamis in the same way that Duncan saluted earlier, as a tribute to his fallen friend, and they prepare to fight. In the book, Paul and Jamis fight wearing just loincloths, but in the movie they wear their still suits, so we don't get to see Timothée Chalamet in just his fighting trunks. In the movie, Paul hears the voices of Bene Gesserit telling him not to be afraid, not to resist, to fulfill his destiny as the Kwisatz Haderach. But in the book, Paul doesn't rely on destiny. He focuses on his training, on the advice of Jessica, Duncan, and Gurney, on his Bene Gesserit mastery of his body and mind. Paul is a fighting machine, trained from infancy by some of the best warriors in the universe. But in the book, Paul's training gives him a disadvantage, because Paul is trained for shield fighting. He learned to attack slowly so that his blade can penetrate shields. But Jamis has no shield. The Fremen don't use shields because shields attract sandworms. So Paul keeps attacking Jamis too slowly, while Jamis, who isn't trained with shields, attacks faster than Paul is used to. So Paul has to change his fighting style. sometimes to survive, you have to unlearn old assumptions. So Paul kills Jamis, winning the respect of the Fremen. Jessica is relieved that her son survived, but in the book, she does something interesting. Jessica immediately comes up to Paul and calls him a killer, her voice harsh and full of scorn. Jessica deliberately makes Paul feel bad about killing Jamis, because Paul is a young man getting a lot of attention and validation for this victory, including from the literal girl of his dreams, Cheney. Jessica doesn't want Paul to learn to enjoy killing, so she applies some emotional conditioning to keep Paul's morality in line. In the movie, there's a real sadness to Jamis's death, because earlier Paul had visions of Jamis being a friend, someone who taught Paul about the desert, but because of Paul's choices and chance, that vision didn't come true, and Paul had to kill the man who could have been his friend. So Paul's visions aren't guaranteed, they're only possibilities, like plans, dreams, hopes, and fears in the real world. They can guide us to achieve our goals, but they can also blind us and limit our thinking. Dune explores the power and the danger of predictions and dreams. In the book, Paul cries for Jamis, and the Fremen see crying as a profound sacred act because of how precious water is in the desert. Paul says that Jamis was his friend, that Jamis taught him that killing has a price. So maybe, in a way, Paul's vision of Jamis as a friend who taught him did come true after all. The Fremen wrap up Jamis's body and take it with them, because when a Fremen dies, the water is drained from their body in a death still and reclaimed for the Fremen to use. The flesh belongs to the person, but his water belongs to the tribe. In the movie, Paul gives a confident, heroic speech. He says he sees the future and that he chooses to be with the Fremen. But at this point in the book, the vibe is darker and uncertain. Paul and Jessica are unsure about the Fremen, but feel forced to use them to survive. Paul doesn't see his future clearly. He feels he is plunged into the abyss. He's afraid of his visions of the bloody jihad and desperately hopes to prevent it. Paul's destiny is dangerous. We see a Fremen riding a sandworm to travel. We have much more to learn about the power of the Fremen and their desert. Cheney says this is only the beginning, and it really is. This Dune movie only covers the first half of the first book in the Dune trilogy, which itself is just the beginning of a larger series. There is so much more to this story. Frank Herbert said that the first Dune book has a coital rhythm, meaning the pacing of the story is like sex. It starts slow and speeds up, and then suddenly, climactically, ends. So by ending this movie halfway through the first book, Denis Villeneuve stops mid-coitus, leaving us waiting without a climax until Dune Part 2 comes out. This movie is a mostly faithful adaptation of the first half of the first book. It introduces the worlds and politics of the Imperium, the mysterious Spacing Guild, the scheming Bene Gesserit. The evil Harkonnens defeat the Atreides, Paul and Jessica escape to the Fremen, and they start to learn the ways of the desert. We see Paul's complicated destiny and ambiguous visions, with hints of the dangers of the Messiah. The movie introduces ideas of the environment and religion and political exploitation and the power of the mind. But the movie leaves out some important scenes, like the dinner party and the traitor subplot. It doesn't capture the tragedy of Dr. Yueh, the meaning of Kynes' death, or the darker, manipulative side of Leto and Jessica. It removes some of the Arabic references from the Fremen, and it skips some plot lines with the Harkonnens and with Thufir. Hopefully we'll get this in the next Dune movie. But to understand the meaning of Paul's story, and the message of Dune, we've got to talk about the other books in the series. So we've got another video called The Philosophy of Dune coming out soon. We've also got a podcast episode out now talking about Dune with Quinn from Quinn's Ideas. We're also doing a Q&A livestream about Dune on this channel in 24 hours. And for some reason, professional shitposter AltSwiftX has released a rap about Dune. So go check out all that Dune content linked below. We're going to make more Dune videos in the future. We're also covering more Song of Ice and Fire, and the upcoming Game of Thrones prequel TV show, House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon is based on a book called Fire and Blood. You can get Fire and Blood, or Dune, as an audiobook for free right now at audible.com/ASX. Sign up for a Premium Plus trial membership, and you can get an audiobook to keep even if you cancel the trial. You could get any Game of Thrones or Dune or Expanse audiobook. Membership also includes unlimited access to thousands of audiobooks and shows in the Audible Plus catalog. Sign up at audible.com/ASX or text ASX to 500 500. And make sure you choose the Premium Plus trial membership for the free audiobook. Thank you to the artists and essays linked below, and thanks to the patrons, including Kevin Wharton, Trish Ledoux, the 360 Archangel, Stan, Tor, Paul, Luke, Master A, Steve Norum, Annie, Claire, and Joe Snow. Cheers.
Like and subscribe to AltShiftX.
Lucky me pansit canton kasalo pa. Busog na, sarapines pa.
Good evening. Hello. Good evening.